Hi guys, I am hanging out in my office before Tarot Circle this evening. And so I am squeezing in today's video before I hit that. Didn't have time to film this morning or yesterday. So I'm kicking myself a little bit. I'm also kicking myself because I forgot to bring my little pod to be mounting my camera. So I apologize for the little bit of jumpiness that is occurring with my video. So I just brushed my hair a little, put on my lipstick for you guys, and tonight I'm going to talk about the danger of the tarot in honor of my tarot class this evening, because I did talk in a past video about how some people have the misconception that the tarot is evil. And overall, the tarot is not a bad thing. It is where it becomes a problem, where it can become dangerous, is how you use it. The tarot in and of itself is just cards, no different than a playing deck of cards. Yes, you can read insights and get in glimmers of what the future may hold for you, get insights as to what is going on in your life right here and now. It can actually be a marvelous, wonderful tool. I am shocked when I do email tarot readings and I get the feedback and people are like, oh my God, Dawn, I told you nothing and you knew exactly what was going on in my life. This is amazing. And it is amazing. And like I said, I am shocked every single time that a single deck of cards printed on paper can be so insightful. And yet it is. The danger comes in with the tarot, however, is if you believe it and you feel as though you have no control over the situation, and it does become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It is when you believe what is being spoken to you, what you are reading in those cards, to be so true, so evident, that you stop behaving the way you used to. That you don't let free will take lead, and you do just sort of say, okay, that's what's destined, so be it. If you believe that's what's destined, then you know what? That is going to be what happens. If you allow it to just be, that's what occurs. Whenever I do a reading, I try to say, this is where you have control. This is what is going on. And so where my readings may not be, this is what's going to happen, but it gives also the insight and the advice, because then it gives you the options of where you're going to be. You can go. And the place where one of those tarot readings can go into become harmful is if you don't have that advice, you don't seek that advice yourself. And it's just absolutely amazing. And Whitney, if you are interested in looking at my email tarot readings, they are on my website, www.revdonlynn.com, under readings. It amazes me every single time. Like I said, I literally take what the meaning of the card is, do a little bit of interpretation, but it's different than when I do my own readings because it tells me what's going to be happening. Like, as opposed to just using the insight, which is great in it too, but the tarot can tell the story. And like I said, if you let it just be, that's where the danger comes in. I'm going to share a story of a very good friend of mine that really demonstrates this and how you have control and how it can be devastating if you don't necessarily have take control and take the bull by the horns. My dear friend, a few years ago, she came over and she's like, Dawn, I need a reading right now. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, read my cards. So I pulled out my cards. I read them for her card by card because being one of my very, very, very close friends, it can sometimes be hard to be tapping into her guides because I have my own opinions about the situation. So I read around the circle of the cards, and it was all about her relationship. Now, I knew she and her husband were on shaking ground, that she wasn't in necessarily a good place. And I'm like, well, honey, if it was my advice, I would be like, you gotta leave him. You gotta get out of that situation. But looking at the cards, I'm like, well, it shows you right here you're unhappy. You're going to, if you continue the same path that you are on, You in a year are going to be coming full circle right back to where you started. You are still going to be unhappy. You are still not going to have the child you want, and nothing is going to be different. She could have taken that reading. She could have taken what it was being said and what was shown in the cards to heart and resigned herself to say, you know what? This sucks. This is going to be my life. I can resign to it. And she could have gone off and she could have, rather than continuing to hold on to the hope of that child, continuing to look for the family, and just acknowledged and said, okay, yeah, you know what? That's just how my husband is. He is a jerk face, and I just have to accept that that's my husband and that's what I married. Well, she didn't. She went home that night and told her husband, she's like, you know what? I made a decision. We are getting divorced. Now, she had been thinking about this for some time. It was not something that she just decided on a whim, okay, that's it. This has been something that had been percolating for a while. But she used the advice that the cards were giving, even though it was showing an outcome that was completely different. She took that as her way of being able to change her future, not just listen to what the cards have to say, not just listen to any advice that I may have given. Now, because she was a friend, I didn't give her any, because like I said, I would have told her to get out of that marriage. But she took the bull by the horns and she exited that relationship and is much, much happier now. She is remarried to a wonderful man who is also, by the way, a wonderful father, because she didn't give up on that dream of the child. And she now has a little one of her own, and she and her husband are in this wonderful, wonderful relationship. And again, had she strictly listened to what the cards had to say, she would have been like, you know what, this is the way it's going to be. I'm going to just give in to it, and that's it. And that's where the danger comes in. It also comes in is if someone is saying something and you don't necessarily believe it to be true, and you trust them over you trust your own instincts. This happened with my husband. He was having, hi Julie, he was having a situation where a friend of ours was reading for him, and they are, hi Mary, and Whitney, I'll get to your question in a minute. As she was reading for him, she was a student teacher, and she was just like, the cards mean this. And she interpreted it to mean one thing, and my husband was like, you know what? I don't think that's the case. And it was there again that he didn't trust his instinct, but if he had trusted what she insisted the cards meant, he would have been following advice that wasn't necessarily good for him. And he would have been going down a path that wasn't what the cards had indicated. Again, it's your own free will. Never, ever, ever give your free will over to somebody else. When you are getting a reading, they are just trying to give you insight, advice, loving insight to help you get to where you want to be, where you're meant to be. But ultimately, you hold all the power. You hold all of the chips. And now, so Whitney, looking at your question, a friend of yours, I love to hear that she is doing tarot readings. My advice to her, and for advice getting those readings from a beginner, is, again, it really is about anyone getting a reading from a beginner, from someone who's been reading a lot and has a massive experience reading. Like, I have had my tarot cards for, oh my goodness, maybe 20 years. And I have been reading professionally for 10 years. I again tell people, if there is something that I say that you think I am off my rocker or doesn't make sense, interpret it as you will. Because anybody getting a reading, you need to interpret it from your vantage point. Take it as it is, because you never know. Something may surprise you. There may be something that comes up. down the road that you're like, I never thought that to be possible, and then it was. But take it as the advice, and really allow it to percolate. Really think through it. Don't just take them at their word. My advice to your friend who is starting as a tarot reader is to not beat herself up if she isn't getting things quite right. It's not for her to interpret and know everything. We are not God. Any reader doesn't know everything. We shouldn't put ourselves above God because we are mere mortals living the human existence. So that's the first thing. So she shouldn't beat herself up if she's struggling or she doesn't quite connect. I would also encourage her to throw away the book and read through her intuition, as opposed to feeling like she has to know the meaning of every single card and all of the symbolism in each card. Look at the cards and see what it says to you. And even as you getting a reading, look at the cards. If there is something that jumps out at it, there are so many times a client will say, you know, what really stands out at me is this symbol. It means this. And as you were talking, I knew exactly what it was because of this. Look at the cards and just get your own feel for them, because trust yourself. Who knows you better than you? I mean, sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it's like, what am I doing? Who am I today? One of my favorite quotes is from Alice in Wonderland, where the caterpillar says, "Who are you?" And Alice, she tunes in and she's like, well, I hardly know, sir. Well, I've changed several times since this morning, because we're constantly changing. And so sometimes it doesn't seem like we may know ourselves quite as well as we do. But we do know ourselves better than others. So always be listening to that. And Mary, I'm glad that you were finally able to catch one live. I'm doing it a little bit earlier today. I am in my office hanging out. I'm having fun here and talking again about one of my favorite things, the tarot. So guys, but I think that's all. Does anybody have any questions about how to get a reading, or why it's so important to have free will and recognize that, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory why you should listen to yourself and why you know you should be following your instinct over somebody else's. But it is something that is so important. And Whitney, I thank you. Jane, I thank you. I love to be doing live streams. I'm going to be tuning back in tomorrow. So anybody who wants to, I'll be doing little mini readings for folks. I'm going to cap it this time. So if you tune in, please do. It's going to be at 9 o'clock tomorrow. And I will be talking to all of you then. Until tomorrow. Bye, guys.